The Elixir Podcast is based on the idea that I feel that everybody's got a poem that speaks to them, and that their response is not necessarily an intellectual one. It's one that is an emotional response. So I wanted to ask people if they had a poem that they liked and why. It's as simple as that. I ask ordinary people from around the world if they have a poem they like, and I ask them to read it. And then once they've read it, I ask them why it's important to them. And they speak to me about what it means to them personally. And then after that, I ask them to read it again so that people can hear it in the context of that personal experience that someone has described. And if the poem is a foreign poem, we also try to include the original version in the language in which it was written. Tom from Sound Sapiens composes music to go with the poems. So the second time that they're read, he will have a musical soundtrack that he has composed to go with the poem. I think because English is so dominant in the world that often we forget that poetry around the world is very much the patrimony of the people in many, many countries, and that people speak in poetry about very similar things, that people's hearts are very similar, actually. Although on the one hand you can spot and begin to understand certain cultural differences, attitudes to God or the heart or relationships and so on, in those poems, actually what unites us all is actually a very similar need to be able to express what is in our hearts. The most moving thing for me is actually the effect that I see the activity of creating these podcasts having on the people that I've asked to read the poetry. They are often accessing emotions and ideas that they have never expressed to other people. And they're often incredibly moved to be allowed to speak about themselves and about the effect that their poem has on them. And that has been the most revelatory and moving experience for me. Well, you can find the podcast on anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and also on my website at helenwing.com. And you can subscribe to the podcast on those apps. So you can also subscribe to the newsletter through the link in the bio, or actually from your podcast platform.